Hello everyone, welcome to English 2, Unit 9. This will be the first of two lectures. Today we're going to be studying modals of obligation, things that you have to do, things that you do not have a choice in, and some things that you do have a choice in. Okay. We're going to start today, as we usually do, with the starter activity. Okay. Today we're going to be looking at some advice to start off. Okay. So starter activity. We can read the instructions at the top here. Now what you're going to do is you're going to have a choice of two phrases. You should or you should not. Okay. So you have those two choices, and what you're going to do is you're going to write those phrases underneath each picture. Okay, so in each picture, you see some people and some actions. Okay, and you're going to indicate whether the action is appropriate in the library. Okay, so basically, if there's something here that is a good idea to do in a library, you should. So any action that is good to do in a library, you can comment, you can write you should underneath the picture. Okay. So the actions included here are eat, talk, return, bring, be, return, put, and write. So those are the actions. We can, those are the verbs anyway. And you can read each of the actions at the top and look at the pictures. Okay. But again, you have two choices. And again, we're doing this in the context of a library. So look at the example here. The action is eat snacks. Okay, we can see the picture. The woman is eating a snack, looks like a healthy snack. Maybe she should do that. Maybe that is a good idea. Okay. But in a library, it's not a good idea. Okay? They don't want you to eat food inside a library. It threatens the state of the books and can do a lot of harm to the books in the library. Okay, so actually, the action of eating snacks, okay, is something you shouldn't do. So, in fact, you should not eat snacks in a library. Okay. So again, eating snacks in a library is not a good idea. So you should not do that. So we use this phrase should for advice, things that you should do, things that are a good idea, actions that are good for you to do. Okay. All right, two choices. You should or you shouldn't. You can write them under each of the pictures here. You have 7 more pictures to write. Okay. Okay, so press pause. You can do the activity, and then when you are finished, we will review. Okay, good. I think most of the vocabulary you could probably figure out from the pictures. Of course, we're talking about materials. We're talking about anything that you removed from a library, not just a book, but it might be some papers that you requested to use. I think we know magazines. Of course, a shelf might be these things where you see them placed. Here's a lot of shelves here in the library. Looks like a bookstore. And maybe you do this word here, bring only non-spill. Okay, so spill is maybe when you knock over your drink. The water or the liquid in the container flows out. Okay, so sutianen drinks, I guess, is the Korean word. Okay. All right, so let's look at the answers, and to do that, we're going to look at, go through the practice activity as we normally do. Again, if you have the textbook, you can register for the ebook, and you can do these activities on your own many times over and over, and it's a great way to prepare for the written test. All right, so the first one is done for us. Next one, talk on your phone. Is that something you should do or something you shouldn't do? Okay. Maybe a related question would be down here. Should you be quiet or should you not be quiet in a library? Okay. That's pretty universally known. Okay. If you ever go to a library, it's generally not noisy. So you should be quiet. You should not be noisy. Okay. So with that in mind, I think this action here, talk on your phone, I think that's something you should not do. Okay, so you shouldn't talk on your phone. Okay, so these are both correct. Right, so you shouldn't be noisy. You should be quiet. Okay. Let's look at a couple of returning activities. Return magazines to the shelf. So if you're looking at a magazine at the library or a periodical, should you return them to the shelf? Should you not? Okay. Often they ask you at libraries not to return books to the shelf. Okay. They want to be in control of that. But magazines, I think they're different. I think you should return magazines. Yes, that's a good idea. Okay, you took it out, you know where it goes back, so return it. I guess books are a bit different. What about this one down here? Return materials on time. Again, is that something you should do? Sounds like it. On time, by definition, an agreed upon deadline, a time that you must stop using the book. So you should return materials on time. Okay. At the top here, again, we talked about non-spill drinks. Okay. Is that something you should do? You should bring only non-spill drinks. Or maybe it's okay to bring spillable drinks. Okay. I think the answer here is should. This is advice. This is good advice. And yes, it's a good advice. It's a good idea to bring only non-spill drinks. Okay. You don't want spill drinks or spillable drinks. Okay. If they spill, they might spill onto the book that you're using at the library. In fact, many libraries, they say you shouldn't eat snacks and you shouldn't bring any drinks. Okay, so if you bring a drink to the library, be careful. The best way to be careful is don't spill it. The best way to not spill it is bring only non-spill drinks. Okay, that leaves 2 at the bottom. Put your feet on the table. Is that a good idea? No, that's a bad idea. You should not put your feet on the table. Okay, bad student. All right, and finally, write in the books. These are books that you are using at a library. You're sharing them with many people. Please do not write in the books. Okay? Write in the books, that is something you shouldn't do. That's a bad idea. Okay? So all these pieces, all these actions here are pieces of advice. Okay? Some things that you should do, and some things you shouldn't do. Things that are a bad idea to do. You shouldn't do these things. You shouldn't do these things. Okay, but some things you should do, like returning materials or being quiet or bringing, those are actions that are a good idea, good advice. Okay. Looks like I got everything correct, 7 out of 7. Okay, and we can come back and practice this at any time. Okay, so in preparation for your quiz, you can just come back and start over if you forgot the answers. Okay, good. So please use the ebook if you have the opportunity. Okay, let's go down to the bottom of page 68. We're going to do some listening. Okay, for the listening portion, we'll do as we usually do. If you're using your textbook at home, please close the textbook. Okay, we're going to listen to a dialogue. Okay, you're going to hear two people speaking, and we're going to listen to the conversation and just see what we can hear. All right, we're just going to listen and see what is generally going on. Okay, I'll play the track 3 times. After this first listening, I will show you some comprehension questions. Okay, here is your first of 3 listenings.
Dialogue Module 9. We have to load them. Listen to the dialogue, then read it with a partner.
The game console arrived today. Let's set it up.
Sure. How do we start?
First, you need to plug it in and connect it to the TV.
What about this extra cable? Where should it go?
That's for the internet. You should connect it to the wall.
Do we have to attach the controllers?
No, they're wireless. If we push the top button, the console will find them.
Cool. What games do we have?
We have 3 games, but we have to load them.
All right, that was your first listening. Did you hear that? What were the man and the woman talking about? Okay. Where were they? What were they doing? Okay. I think maybe you know some of those answers. Maybe you know some of these answers. Okay. So I'm going to put up these module questions again. Okay. The comprehension questions again. So 4 questions. Number 1, what arrived today? Okay. Number 2, what is the extra cable for? Okay, so what's the use of it? What is it used for? Okay. Number 3, which feature is wireless? Okay, so they describe something as wireless. What is it? Okay. Number 4, we're looking for a number. How many? How many games? How many games do they have? Okay, so we're looking for a number to answer number 4. And number 1, just kind of a basic introduction. I think we know what arrived today. I'm going to play the track 2 more times. Listen and answer the 4 comprehension questions.
Dialogue Module 9. We have to load them. Listen to the dialogue, then read it with a partner.
The game console arrived today. Let's set it up.
Sure. How do we start?
First, you need to plug it in and connect it to the TV.
What about this extra cable? Where should it go?
That's for the internet. You should connect it to the wall.
Do we have to attach the controllers?
No, they're wireless. If we push the top button, the console will find them.
Cool. What games do we have?
We have 3 games, but we have to load them.
Okay, did you get that? Maybe a lot of this information you remember from the first listening. Okay? But if you still don't have the answers, that's okay. Listen a 3rd time. If you do have the answers, check them as you listen for a third and final time. Here's your final listening.
Dialogue Module 9. We have to load them. Listen to the dialogue, then read it with a partner.
The game console arrived today. Let's set it up.
Sure. How do we start?
First, you need to plug it in and connect it to the TV.
What about this extra cable? Where should it go?
That's for the internet. You should connect it to the wall.
Do we have to attach the controllers?
No, they're wireless. If we push the top button, the console will find them.
Cool. What games do we have?
We have 3 games, but we have to load them.
Good. All right, let's check this out. I'm gonna adjust the screens here and open your books to page 68, or you can just use the screen here. We're going to look at the dialogue as we go through this, okay? So going over the questions, these come in 4 different areas. Number 1, what arrived today? Okay, so that kind of introduces what we're talking about, and the answer is here in the first sentence. The game console arrived today. Okay. Normally we don't use the word game console, we use the name of the game console. Okay. So the actual name of the product, but generally they are called a game console. Okay. Some of you may have these at home, so you know what I'm talking about. So that's what arrived today. That's in the first sentence. Number 2, what is the extra cable for? Okay. Now, in the dialogue, Kate says, what about this extra cable? She says, where does it go? Okay. Now, Mike responds, you should connect it to the wall. So that's where it goes. Okay. That's not the question we're looking for. We're asking, what is the cable for? What is its purpose? Okay. And Mike answers that first. Okay. So that cable is for the internet. Okay. So you connect the console to the internet. So you have a cable plug-in at your home. So you connect that to the use that to connect the internet to the game console. Okay. Number 3, what feature is wireless? Okay, Mike says that. He says they're wireless. Okay. So what is he talking about? He's talking about the controllers. So the controllers, right, so those would be the things that you would hold in your hands to affect the game on the screen. As you can see, they're connecting the game console to the TV. They could watch the action on the TV, and they would control or change the action on the TV with the controllers. Okay. Okay. So they're wireless, so you don't need to physically connect them to the game console. Okay. The console will find them, but probably Mike and Kate will lose them under the sofa. All right, and number 4, how many games do they have? Mike says we have 3 games. Okay, good. Okay. But unlike the old kind where you'd have some sort of cassette, here you have to load them. Okay. Good. All right, so that's the comprehension portion of it, and you can see a lot of the language that they're using here for talking about this. See a lot of the word should. Okay, now I'm not sure why they're saying should. As I said before, should is used with advice. You can choose. You can do this or do that. But I think most of these are have to. Okay. The cable for the internet, you should connect it to the wall. I think you have to connect it to the wall. Otherwise, the game console may not work. So we can see the difference between should and have to. Well, maybe I can explain it. So these two differences, have to, you have no choice. With should, you have a choice. It's a good idea to connect it to the wall. So that's that's I guess a choice that you have. In this case here, do we have to attach the controllers? You don't have a choice. No, they're wireless. Okay. Maybe a better way to explain this all is to go to page 69, and you can see, as they explain here, the degrees of obligation in these modals. So in the first starter activity, we talked about things you should do, okay? Things that are a good idea to do. You should wear a tie. Okay? That's different from you have to wear a tie. Okay? So if you're at an event or if you have a job where you have to wear a tie, you don't really have a choice. Okay? With should, it's a good idea to wear a tie. Okay? I strongly advise it. Okay? Or maybe this is more of a strong advising. Okay? This is advice, and this is maybe strong advice to wear a tie. Okay. And so like we saw with the starter activity, you have a number of actions. Visit us, fill in a form, practice, call your father, tell the truth. These are all good pieces of advice, but in some cases, they might be necessary, things that you have to do. Okay? Things that you have to do, things that are, as I said, necessary. There's no choice in the matter. Okay? Whereas down here, you see that these are things that are choices. So you should do it, you ought to, it's a good idea to do it. Whereas here, you're looking at things that are necessary. You do not have a choice. So it says degree of obligation, but really we're looking at level of choice. Here you still have some choice, but here, no choice. You must do it. You have to do it. You are obligated to do it. Okay? You do not have a choice. Note also the numbers at the side here, talking about levels of obligation for 1, 2, and 3. So number 1, this is something that you might only hear from a speaker. Have to, often used when you're talking about rules that are set by other people or other groups. So maybe your school or maybe a federal office has certain rules that you have to do, well, such as fill in a form. So that's something you would have to do. It's not somebody's idea. It's not something that's an opinion. It's necessary, and another group says so. Okay? And for need to, we often use it for, as it says here, for a desired goal. Okay, so it's, again, not something you really need to do all the time, but again, if you want to do something well, you need to practice more. Now, you don't need to do something well, but if you want to, then there's something that's necessary for you to do. Often used with conditionals, if clauses with modals. This might be the modal. If you want to do well, you need to practice more. Okay. So again, these are fairly common phrases, and you've maybe heard them in use, but these are explained a bit better. Let's go down and look at the other explanations. Sometimes you have you're obliged to not do something. Okay, so they have examples here. You must not arrive late. You'd better not forget his birthday. You ought not to tell a lie. You shouldn't wear shorts. Okay, right. So again, so this one at the bottom is some good advice, but it doesn't sound like a rule or anything. Okay. Again, number one is a rule that somebody is stating. Ought not to is not so common in spoken language. We usually use the word shouldn't or should not. Okay, but you might see it in more formal language. It's not so common. Okay, and again, you had better not. This is strong, very strong suggestions for you. It's very strong advice. You can forget his birthday, but my advice, don't. You had better not forget his birthday. It's very important. So notice the placement of the word not, much the same with the modals used for obligation, or at least positive obligation. Okay. And sometimes you have no obligation. Okay? You don't have to worry about certain things. Okay? So you don't have to make a reservation. You don't need to make a reservation. Okay. So 예약 할 수 없어요. Right. So it's something that's not necessary. Okay? So especially for something like a restaurant, this is a common question or common piece of advice. Do I need to make a reservation? Is it busy? Is it, or can I just visit without a reservation? Okay, and right, so you don't have to make a reservation. You don't need to. Okay, so maybe there is not limited access or seating. Okay. So as opposed to a negative obligation, with no obligation, the not comes with a auxiliary verb, and it is before the modal phrase, not after. Yeah. Okay. So again, with the and so with all these modals with the negatives, some of the not comes after the word, making it a negative obligation. Okay, so something you shouldn't do. But here, when there's no obligation, the not comes before, along with an auxiliary verb. Okay, you can see these in use. Okay, that concludes the first lecture. Just a lot of introduction, some listening, and looking at the language. We're going to go into the speaking activities in lecture 2. I will see you then.